In this video, I'm going to talk about the relationship between orgone and the elements in relations to the planets, which I will be swiftly talking about astrology in short terms for you to kind of gather the science of all of this, because they all interlink. The elements obviously are air, fire, water and earth. The true elements are fire and water, which actually comes from the electromagnetic fluid. How can we explain this a bit deeper? Fire is an actual pure element which is electric, and water is actually a composition of magnetism, which is to draw in, and fire to project. So they are interrelated. That's why they call the electromagnetic current. So, and earth and air are not actually true elements. They are intertwined elements which mix. So, before I get into the whole element side of the actual orgone structure and how they interrelate, I would like to first go a touch into the history of some of its composition. And so the history in relations to orgone goes as far as, ancient times. We're looking at the Babylonian, the Egyptians, it goes very far. So it goes beyond Wilhelm Reich. Reich was one who rediscovered it and understood what orgone was, and that's why he named it orgone, because it's linked with the orgasmic structure and how we function. And really the whole orgone energy now is actually more beneficial for people who live in the West, because we have become so neurotic. So let me touch into the history of orgone. There's so much information that's coming through my mind at the moment that it's going to be hard for me to just be able to kind of go into so much, but I will try my best. So I'm gonna quote Franz Barden in this, because obviously he is a very known author in relations to the practical transformation side of the mind that one can tap into in various ways if one decides to. So first and foremost, here we are. The first mentions of a device very similar to orgonite was by Franz Barden. He was born in 1909 and died approximately around 1958. A Hermetic practitioner who had a great experience with the occult and healing. Barden was imprisoned for 3 years by the Nazis for refusing to reveal esoteric information. So there's a relationship to possibly the Nazis and Hitler in this meaning. That's what I'm thinking. So because obviously he did not reveal his information. So in his book, which he published, or was published in 1956, Initiation of Hermetics, well, it's a practical book of instructions to help transform yourself. He mentions a device called a fluid condenser, which can be used to store etheric energy. These condensers can be solid, liquid, or gas. Barden's solid condensers consist of a mixture of the 7 planetary metals. So if we are talking about 7 planetary metals, we're talking about 7 planets in relations to lead, tin, iron, gold, copper, brass and silver, coil and resin, practically the same ingredients as orgonite. So here we are saying that the whole composition of this is interlinked with the structure of orgone energy. This is what Reich was using. Now, to go a touch deeper, orgonite, as we know, it was first made by an Austrian, Karl Hans Wells. In 1991, he improved on Reich's orgone accumulator by creating a device made of metal particles cast in resin. So the whole composition of the casting of resin actually goes back to Carl Hans Wells. So that's where the improvement of orgonite has been introduced. So for all of those people that are saying, oh, you cannot use various metals in orgonite, no, the composition is different. How it's structured is different from what Wilhelm Reich was creating. Because what Reich created was an orgone accumulator. The accumulator was actually a room that, or a box, should I say, that you would go inside and you will sit down, and that will give you various orgone pulses or healing benefits, and those were reflected due to this room. And that box or that room couldn't be placed in any areas where electricity or electrical or devices were placed. It had to be in a place where nature was. So this is another thing to bear in mind here. So that structure is actually a different mixture to the composition of metals, and the resin is the main cast in this. The resin is actually an organic structure that is used in orgone to create that intermix. So, all right. So I'll carry on from my reading. I've nearly finished, and I'll go straight into it. Unlike the aurak, which accumulated both positive orgone POR or deadly orgone DOR, so that is quote unquote orgone generator, right? Turn DOR into POR. Okay, DOR is deadly orgone energy, POR is positive orgone energy, just for sentences of understanding here. So Wells coined the term orgonite. So that's where orgonite, the term orgonite came through, even though orgone was the first word that Wilhelm Reich used. He later transmarked the name, however, he did so only in 2005, nearly 10 years later, when the word had already become a commonly used generic term. Now, just a little touch more before I go back into what I was saying. I'm just going to add the last piece of history. Don and Carol Croft improved on the original orgonite formula in the early 2005, which is not too long ago, by adding crystal to the resin metal mix. So this is where the whole change of orgone became, or now transformed itself. Now I'm going to touch a bit deeper into that, so you kind of get the drift of why this new composition is like an enhancer. So the quartz crystal, okay, created a piazonic charge. That piazonic charge is what creates that effect, which amplifies the energy and aids in transforming the DOR, the deadly orgone energy. So the quartz crystal is actually what creates, you probably can't see it clearly, which creates that positive charge, that create that charge. So because quartz is an amplifier by nature, it amplifies anything that and it cleanses anything that is negative, generally. Now, okay, so reading back on this is, I'm probably on the last sentence. The quartz crystal, with its piazonic electric effect, amplifies the energy and aids in transforming DOR. Some believe that orgonite without a quartz crystal will over the long term become an orgone accumulator, which can be harmful if it is placed in an area heavy with DOR. That I can believe, because I've just mentioned that the orgone accumulator is a different mixture. It's a box and it doesn't have quartz. The quartz is a piazonic charge which helps and transform the actual orgone device. So now this is where the difference comes in. So when people say don't use various metals, now we are talking about something else here. Okay. So the Crofts, well, the Crofts were also pioneers in the orgonite gifting movement, which has now spread worldwide. That's the final part. So Don and Carol Croft were able to actually spread all this information, not just talking about it, but actually physically doing the hard work, which they spread all over the world. And you know, a lot of people now are using orgonite to stop deadly radiation affecting us in various aspects, in various ways, you know, and you know, by placing it through tower buildings and planting it inside the earth and stuff. Right. So now we know about that. We know about the composition of orgone, how it's structured, where its function, what its function is, and so forth. Let me talk about now the relationship to the elements in relations to orgone, and how it becomes an amplifier and also a weather modifier. Right. How it functions. It functions from the etheric plane. Okay, the etheric plane is very close linked to the air element. Right, because the air element deals with thinking, and it deals with the mental kind of side of thinking. So the air element constantly changes, so it obviously builds into the fire element, because they work in relation, fire and the air, like the fire needs the air. You can't have a flame without air, so they interrelate.